fastest superspeedway in the world, with lap speeds of over 200 miles per hour. You know, sitting at home, sometimes it looks easy when you watch your favorite drivers tackling these big tracks. But believe me, there's a lot more involved than just going round and round. It takes skill, top race car, courage, and experience to successfully negotiate a superspeedway. Hi, I'm Ed Bruce, and today we're bringing you a race that should provide some exciting and possibly unpredictable action. It's the Nascar North 200 from Dover Downs, Delaware, the Monster Mile. The boys who run the Nascar North competition usually race on small quarter-mile to half-mile oval tracks. And for a lot of them, this is their first crack at a high-bank superspeedway. How will they respond to the new challenge? One thing's for sure, we're in for some great racing. As always, my good friends Brock Yates and Steve Evans are up at Dover Downs getting ready to call today's race for us. Also today, as the race progresses, I'll take time out to show you around the Hall of Fame Museum here at Talladega. And we'll look at some of the fastest cars in the history of racing. But right now, let's join Steve and Brock at the track.
Thank you, Ed, and welcome everyone to Dover International Speedway, where for the second year we bring you coverage of the NASCAR North 200. Always a very interesting race because it's the only time during the season that the short track aces get a shot at a high bank super speedway. And Mike Berry was certainly not intimidated by the Monster Mile. In his first ever race here at Dover, he has qualified on the pole. And Mike, qualifying is one thing. Now we got a tough 200 miles ahead of us.
We sure do. It's going to be a long ways. I hope the car hangs together, and I hope I hang together. And we just got to get out front and go like a dam. Hopefully leave everybody.
Good luck to you. My friend Brock Yates is on the outside of the front row with Chuck Bound.
Thanks, Steve. Chuck, super strong race last year until mechanical problems put you on the sidelines. Any thoughts about strategy this time around?
Well, I think, Brock, we're going to just use the same plan we did last year with the Skull Bandit. Let's run as hard as we can, start to finish, and hope the luck goes in our favor this time, and hope all the hubs stay glued on the race car, and maybe we'll be in there. It feels real good at this point. I'm real happy with it, and the track's in good condition, and it's a nice day, and we'll just see what happens.
Well, good luck, Chuck. We know you give her a good ride.
Thank you, Brock.
Thank you. And now to Steve Evans with Randy Lejoy in the third starting position.
Randy, got 200 tough miles ahead of you on a track that a lot of these guys are not used to. The first few laps could be interesting.
Yeah, first few laps could be interesting, but hopefully I'll be here at the end to pick up the one big one.
All right, and Brock Yates is on the outside of the second row with Steve Poland.
Steve, you're on the in the fourth starting slot here. Have you got any thoughts about your first lap strategy?
Well, first lap strategy, I'm just going to try to hold my own. I plan on the early running just to stay with the leaders, but if the opportunity opens up and there's a hole for the front, I'll go for the front.
Okay. Good luck to Steve Poland and the rest of the field. And in the event you think this is going to be an easy race, these NASCAR North drivers face some real challenges here at Dover. And have a look at what happened last year when they tried to run the Monster Mile.
Brock, at about the 150-mile mark a year ago, Bobby Dragon of Milton, Vermont, fell victim to this tricky racetrack. His Pontiac slams almost head-on into the inside wall. The car is virtually destroyed. Bobby Dragon stunned, but okay.
Well, Steve, as you can see, Dragon comes down off the straightaway, which is also banked here at Dover, and hit that inside retaining wall, and an awful clout. But fortunately, these cars are very stout, and he did manage to walk away. The straightaway is, by the way, 9 degrees in banking. The corners are 24 degrees, so he got an awful ride down off that banking, got into that wall in a big way.
And Brock, as you said at the time, this is the perfect justification for those 5-point safety harnesses and the reason why drivers snug them down till it's almost painful. Bobby Dragon, he was okay. The car destroyed, but Bobby's back with a brand new Pontiac, qualified number 6 on the outside of row number 3. He's ready.
He sure is. He's one of the most popular drivers on this circuit, along with his brother, his older brother, Beaver Dragon. And there's the number 1 qualifier, Mike Berry, who set a new track record here, 135 miles an hour, which is really flying on a 1-mile track like Dover, Steve.
Oh, indeed it is. And Brock, there's really no place on this racetrack to relax. It's like a short track in that respect. 24-degree banks, 9-degree straightaway banking. Nowhere are you ever really comfortable to where you can rest your arms or your shoulders.
Boy, you sure can, Steve. And it's even more complicated for guys like these fellas because they run on short tracks, third miles, half miles, paved tracks up in the northeastern United States and also in the province of Quebec and Ontario, Canada.
As I've been talking to these fellas in the garage area, Brock, I sense a lot more confidence this year than last. Last year, they had only heard rumors about this racetrack and its reputation for damaging race cars. Now that they've got a little seasoning here, they're a lot more comfortable and confident.
And a good field of cars. They seem very poised, as you say, and more than ready to come racing. They were a little bit apprehensive about Dover, but we had only really one incident last year, and that was the one we saw earlier with Bobby Dragon, and no major damage to the automobiles, and I think they're coming into this race ready to really stand on it.
Well, Brock, the General Motors product certainly is popular with the NASCAR North drivers. This field is top-heavy with Pontiacs particularly. There's an occasional Camaro, a Buick, an Oldsmobile, and a couple of Fords for a little spice. They look an awful lot like Grand National stock cars from NASCAR, but there are a few subtle differences, as Brock found out when he took a close-up look.
To the unpracticed eye, this looks like just another classic American stock car, but it's a special breed. This is a NASCAR North stock car, an automobile that runs on a 108-inch wheelbase. Stock body, this particular one, a Pontiac. Two different classes of engine in this particular kind of racing. This one carries a 311-inch V8 engine running on gasoline with carburetor. Also, a larger class is permitted, 355 cubic inches, with a 200-pound weight penalty. This car has 2,900-pound weight limit. The larger engines run with 3,100 pounds, so that you get a little bit of an advantage in terms of horsepower with a bigger engine, but also you carry more weight. This particular automobile of Robbie Crouch's is one of the few 311 cars that we'll see running here at Dover. He expects to get better fuel consumption, maybe a little better handling with the automobile as the race progresses, so it's a gamble for him with a smaller, less horsepower engine. But it's a specialized race car, and it should run very, very well here at Dover Downs, one of the few really long tracks these cars run on in their 30-race season.
The 311 combination has run well for Robbie Brock. He qualified fifth. He's the defending series champion. They're coming out of turn number 4, hoping for a green flag. They've got it. The NASCAR North 200 is underway.
And Mike Berry jumps right off the pole, Steve, to catch the lead, but Chuck Bound in that other Pontiac is challenging on the outside groove, so it's going to be a race between those two Pontiac cars down the back straightaway, but Mike Berry jumps in front as they go into turn 3 and takes himself about a 2-car length lead.
Well, he's got to be smiling in that helmet, Brock. That's exactly what he wanted to do, get out front on this first lap. And we've got one sideways, Brock.
We sure do. That's Stub Fadden in that number 16 Pontiac. He does a couple of 360s, but keeps it off the wall. A mighty close call for him. And you know what, Steve? That's been almost duplicated what we saw Bobby Dragon do in last year's race, except Stub kept it out of the wall.
Well, Bobby wishes he'd have spun, Brock, instead of coming diagonally into the wall. As we saw, the yellow is out, as I'm sure you expected. They're going to gather this field up, check the racetrack, make sure there's no debris on it from the spinning car number 16 of Stub Fadden from North Haverhill, New Hampshire. Stubby, he might have grazed the wall just a bit there, Brock. The car seems to be bent up.
Well, I'm sure he also flat spotted a couple of tires in that thing and definitely increased his heart rate a little bit. So as Mike Berry leads the field around under caution, Stub Fadden heads for the pits. We're going to take a break. We'll be back with more from Dover.
Flag is still out here at Dover Downs in Delaware. The NASCAR North 200-mile race didn't even go one full lap before we had a spectacular spin down the front straightaway. The track still being checked for debris, make sure that it's safe to continue the running of this race. And again, let's take a look, Brock Yates. It's Stub Fadden going for a wild ride.
He sure did, and he gathered it all up before he got into that inside retaining wall, and that's concrete backed up with steel I-beams, Steve, and you don't want to do that. You don't want to hit that too hard, and he didn't. But he's still going to have a look at that automobile as he gets back into the pits. So he must have done some suspension damage. I think he speculated that it may be that something broke that caused him to spin, but we've seen in practice here at Dover that these guys, the NASCAR North guys, have had problems with that turn number 4. Coming off of that banking and down that front straightaway seems to be a tricky spot in this speedway, and who's to know, we may see some more problems as the race progresses. In the meantime, the leaders under caution, Mike Berry, Randy Lejoy, who's now competing for Rookie of the Year honors in this league. He ran a little bit the season before, but now he's right up in second place. Steve Paulin in third, and Chuck Bound, who fell all the way back to fourth place when that caution came out, Steve, is riding in fourth.
Well, the pace car is off the track now, Brock, and we have got a restart of the NASCAR North 200. Chuck Bound bounces right back into the third spot, but still leading is number 24, Mike Berry, followed by Randy Lejoy, number 07.
And Randy's going to have a move on him on the outside of the racetrack coming off turn 2 and almost got up against the wall, but ducks in behind Barry as they head down into turn 3, Steve.
And at the apex of turn 3, going into 4, Mike Berry able to pull out another car length. He had a little reserve there somewhere.
Yeah, he's got more steam down the straightaways, it appears, than Lejoy does, but Lejoy kind of gets in behind him as they dive into the corners. Now, Mike Berry has established about a 4-car length lead down the back straightaway, so it could be that he just didn't get started quite as quickly as he wanted to after that caution dropped, and Lejoy got a little bit of a jump on it. But now Mike Berry seems to be holding his own out front with a good, strong lead now down the front straightaway. Well, you know, Steve, this racetrack is really more corner than it is straightaway. The straights are only 1,000 feet long. We know that a mile is 5,280 feet, so that leaves 3,000 feet of corners. So if you don't handle on this track, you're in deep trouble.
Well, right now, the favorite line is down low, hugging the white line going into these 24-degree bank turns. As we saw last year, that may move higher during the course of the race. What a battle going on for the 3rd spot, Brock. Number 48, Robbie Crouch, has it now. Number 34 is Steve Poland, and 07, Randy Lejoy. I'd like to take it from him.
Well, Robbie Crouch is one of the most popular drivers in this league. In fact, has been named the most popular driver a couple of times. But right now, Robbie in that blue and white number 48 is being challenged by Steve Poland in that red number 34 Pontiac as they dive down into turn 3, both taking that low line, Steve, as you said. And now out on that front straightaway where that little tricky spot exists here at Dover Downs. But they go through in good shape. In fact, Poland seems to be kind of diving low, trying to get underneath Crouch. But Crouch rides it out up on the high groove and stays out front.
Apparently 2 very evenly matched cars and drivers, Brock, fighting for that spot. The leader continues to be Mike Berry in car number 34, the black machinist in front of the pack. Randy Lejoy right on his bumper.
Well, both these guys are running the bigger engine cars in this NASCAR North Tour, and it looks as if Mike Berry definitely has a little engine horsepower, as he can hold a nice strong lead over Randy Lejoy as the 2 cars now start to lap some of the slower automobiles, Steve.
And Brock, I can see number 7, Chuck Bound, falling back a bit. You remember he started in the front row right alongside our leader, Mike Berry, maybe having some problems.
It's possible, as we see our current leader, Mike Berry, in that beautiful black number 24 Pontiac, beginning to lap even more slower cars. Berry been in this NASCAR North Tour for 4 years, had a big season in 1981, 7 races. But right now is in a little bit of a dry spell, so he's going to try to pick it back up here at Dover Downs, Steve.
And Brock, there's no way you can run 200 miles without at least 1 pit stop. And these fellas are not used to making pit stops. That'll be some interesting activity coming up later on in this race. A lot of them just recruited volunteers to help them.
Indeed. As now, look at this.
He blew an engine. That is the leader. Mike Berry has blown an engine, and now he is spinning in his own oil.
And up into the fast groove he goes. Fortunately, everybody gets by him. Down into the infield with a blown engine. Our leader, Mike Berry, the pole sitter, out early. No question about it. He's finished for the day. A tough break, but on the other hand, it could have been curtains for him if he'd been hit in the vulnerable side of these cars, which is the passenger door. And he missed, everybody missed him, Steve.
And Brock, the yellow flag is out, and Chuck Bound is the first to take advantage of it. We mentioned earlier that Bound had fallen back from the front row clear back to 8th position. So Bound is in the pits for the stop. His guys look like they're plenty organized, Brock. They've been practicing this.
Well, Chuck Bound is one of the few guys in NASCAR North that has some Grand National racing experience. I'm sure he was more ready for that yellow flag than perhaps some of the rest of the guys as we see the tow car getting ready to haul Mike Berry's car out of the way. But Bound is, interestingly enough, too, is one of the few guys that doesn't come from the northeastern United States. He's from Portland, Oregon, who's kind of found himself a home up in the north and really likes to run this series as he gets underway with a good, quick pit stop.
This was really a little early in the race for an awful lot of the drivers to pit, Brock. For a guy like Bound, it came as a big advantage. Anytime you can pit under yellow, it's an advantage. And Bobby Dragon, a little bit of a surprise, him coming in on this yellow. Be interesting to see what kind of service he asked the crew to perform, Brock. Crewman going inside the car, that could only mean a chassis adjustment.
Absolutely, Steve. They'll go in there and jack some weight around on the rear suspension. He's surely having handling problems. As we see, the new leader, Randy Lejoy, who's taken over, of course, ever since Mike Berry almost got in big trouble when his engine blew in turn 2. So Bobby Dragons gets topped off with fuel, and final adjustments are made on that rear suspension as everything looks pretty routine. Crewman checking his right side rubber, and he says, hey, we don't need a change here. Crewman out of the automobile, chassis adjustments made, and Bobby Dragon underway, under caution here at Dover Downs. Yes, look at this, Steve. Chuck Bound back in the pits.
Yes, he is, and getting left side rubber this time, so he was in the pits twice on this caution flag alone.
Well, that's oftentimes done in this kind of racing. They'll put on one side rubber, then jacks down and get underway and keep on coming down and come right back on in again. So, as you can see, though, they're having a little bit of trouble with that left front wheel. And that was not a particularly fast stop for Chuck Bound. Fortunately, it was under caution, so it doesn't cost him a lot of time. And there goes the former leader's car into the pits. He's finished for the day. We aren't. We'll be back at Dover Downs after this.
Hey, it's Charlie Douglas on the road from Nashville, Tennessee.
The folks at Cindy Lou's Musical Mail Order have come up with a record offer that you're going to find hard to pass up. It's a big trucker special. There are 50 hit songs on 5 albums or 5 8-tracks or 5 cassettes. The choice is yours for $19.95. And each one of these albums is a national bestseller loaded with your favorite hit songs, and here are some of them.
That endless black ribbon means lonesome.
There at that crossroads was the end of a line for Big Joe. And
Flag of the day is still out here at the NASCAR North 200, Dover Downs in Dover, Delaware. I'm Steve Evans along with Ed Bruce and Brock Yates. Brock is right now in Chuck Bound's pit.
Tires always play an integral part in every automobile race, but in this particular case, it could be a unique and unlucky event for Chuck Bound. He started on the outside pole, but very early in the going had to stop because of a leak in the sidewall in this Goodyear Eagle. They're known to be terribly reliable tires and never fail normally unless they're worn very heavily or cut by something on the racetrack. In this particular case, these tires are Grand National tires that are called Scuff. They've been used in practice by the Grand National cars and then turned over to the NASCAR North guys as a kind of spec tire. Everybody gets the same kind of rubber. But to do that, to make sure that they were the proper kind of tires, Goodyear branded them with a mark on the tire. In this particular case, this brand may have cut too deeply into the sidewall, caused it to leak, and forced Chuck Bound to make a very early and unscheduled pit stop. So by trying to make things fair for the competitors, it could be that just a slight error on the part of the guys that mounted these tires could cost Bound the race.
Brock, I don't believe we're far away from a green flag. As the emergency crews are off the track, Randy Lejoy leading the pack around. Robbie Crouch, car number 48, settling down into the second spot. And indeed, we've got a green flag. We are racing again in the NASCAR North 200.
We sure are, Steve, and Randy Lejoy heads down into turn 1 with Robbie Crouch right on his tail and the whole rest of the NASCAR North Tour just hard on his heels. Poor old Chuck Bound all the way back to 26th place after that cut tire. Started on the outside of the front row. There he is in that number 7 Pontiac. He's going to be a factor, though, I expect, because he is really quick. And as I said earlier, he's one of the few guys that has some real super speedway experience, Steve.
And Randy Lejoy moving up a little higher in the turns than they were running earlier in this race, Brock. Not quite as close to that inside marker.
Boy, he could throw a blanket over the top 3 runners, Randy Lejoy, Robbie Crouch, and Steve Pollins. They come down the back straightaway. Very tight competition, especially after Mike Berry fell out, and Steve's with him.
Well, Mike, calling that tough luck doesn't begin to describe it.
I know, it looked like we were going to hopefully run away with it, and I got a little conservative there in driving. I was holding back, and all of a sudden, boom, that was it. I was glad we kept it off the wall.
Something internal in the engine let go barely, huh?
I didn't catch a word of that. Thank you.
And the interview is over. But I'm sure you're right, Steve. I'm sure something did break in that engine as we see Chuck Bound starting to really roll in that number 7 Pontiac. He's got fresh rubber on board, and he is smoking.
Well, Brock, I doubt that Dover Downs is Chuck Bound's favorite racetrack. You remember a year ago here, he was leading the race, had mechanical problems, and had to park the car halfway through.
He sure did. So he's got to be hoping that this is not a repeat performance of last year, and right now it isn't, because he's turning in some of the quickest laps of anybody on a racetrack, and he's moving up on these guys. Randy Lejoy, right behind him, Robbie Crouch in 1-2 in this 200-miler here at Dover Downs, and Randy Lejoy right now has got all he wants from Robbie Crouch. Robbie Crouch, by the way, Steve, is another transplant like Chuck Bound. He's a native of Tampa, Florida, but moved up to Vermont to take part in this very, very competitive NASCAR North circuit.
Well, Brock, I'm fascinated watching Chuck Bound move up through the pack. He's now right behind the 13th car, Mike Perot, and what a difference a set of tires can make.
Right you are, because you can see Bound back there in that green and white number 7 is riding high at Dover Downs. That means that he can run up high on the racetrack, and you got a handle to do that as he goes around Mike Perot heading down into turn 1. So he's going to be a factor. And oh, look at this, Steve.
We got a problem with the Canadian. This is Claude Gould from the province of Quebec. The number 66 car is headed into the pit area. He got out of the traffic just in time. Claude, sponsored by Honest Ed's Garage up there in Quebec. Brock, you ever have any car trouble in Canada, just stop on by.
Well, I think Honest Ed's probably got his hands full working on Claude Gould's car right now as the caution's out here and Claude heads into the pits to see if they can get that thing ready for some more racing action. So in the meantime, with the caution flag out, let's go to Ed Bruce.
In the long history of motorsports and development of speed, this certainly has to rank as one of the most historically significant cars in the world. It's certainly one of the more famous, and certainly in this museum. This is Andy Allred, who's the director of the Motorsports Hall of Fame at Talladega, Alabama. Andy, what is this car?
This is a Bluebird. This is probably the most famous car in the world today. It set a land speed record back in 1935 with 330 miles an hour, Ed.
You know, to put that in proper context, we're talking about almost 50 years ago. What's the power?
It's got a 1,800 horsepower Rolls-Royce engine in it.
That's in your basic Silver Cloud Rolls-Royce engine. This was an aircraft engine.
That's right. The same one that they ran in the P-38s.
The tires, looking at the... I wouldn't drive around on those at 30 miles an hour.
Well, of course, when they started their run, the tires were new, and they estimated these tires would last 7 minutes at the speed they were running on the beach.
Can you imagine sitting in that cockpit and seeing pieces of tire flying back at you when you were trying to break it down from 300 miles an hour?
These tires cost the British government $1,800 a piece back in 1935, so they were extra special tires at that time.
Well, the whole car's pretty extra special. We got a lot of special things here, and we're going to see some more of them later, okay?
Sure.
Right now, let's go back to racing in the NASCAR North 200 from Dover down.
All right, thank you very much, Ed. We are still under caution, but probably not for very long. Randy Lejoy leads it, number 07. Robert Crouch still hanging in there for second in car number 48, followed by Steve Poland. We do have a green flag. We are racing again in the NASCAR North 200, and look at this formation, Brock Yates.
Randy Lejoy just nips underneath Robbie Crouch as they go down into turn 1 and holds onto the lead. But boy, I'll tell you, Crouch isn't giving an inch. And Steve Poland wants to get in there as well in that third spot. So we got a three-way battle for the lead. But Randy Lejoy, who's just a youngster on this circuit, showing all kinds of poise. And there, coming at him, is old Chuck Bound. He's back in 13th place, but he's moving up through the field. He's definitely running at the same lap speeds as the leader. So if there's a caution again, Steve, watch out, because Chuck Bound will be right there. Don't forget, he's got a full tank of fuel and fresh rubber on board.
Well, Randy Lejoy's ultimate goal is to run Grand National cars, Brock, but he figures he needs at least one more year of seasoning. And right now, he is getting a lot of pressure from Robbie Crouch. Car number 48 is going to try him on the inside for the lead.
He might just get him, because that's the quick line down into turn 1. But look at this. Lejoy's hanging on in that high groove, but can't do it. Robbie Crouch, a new leader in that blue and white number 48 Pontiac, takes the lead. Randy Lejoy, but Lejoy wants it right back as they head into turn 3. He's going to go high. Look at that. He got a fender up in front of Robbie Crouch, but couldn't hold it as they come down the front straight. Robbie Crouch establishes a lead of about, what, 6 to 8 inches, Steve?
About that. You know, I think he took Randy Lejoy by surprise a bit. Lejoy made a little bit of a mistake, got high, and this fellow, Robbie Crouch, who, as you said, a two-time most popular driver on this circuit, now leads it.
Very likable, very poised young man from Tampa, Florida, now living in a little town called Georgia, Vermont. Makes a living full-time on this NASCAR North circuit. There's a lot of money in point and prize money in this circuit, and you can do well, Steve, running on a full-time basis here.
Well, Chuck Bound, number 7, Brock, has now moved up into the 7th place, but he's got a couple of heavyweights in front of him. In fact, just in front of him, the 0 car is Dick McCabe, who finished 2nd a year ago, and in 5th place in front of McCabe is number 59, another Canadian, Hector Leclerc.
So Bound's charge toward the leaders may be impeded a little bit here as he goes through the slower cars. The closer he gets to the front, Steve, the harder it gets to get by these guys. And McCabe's going to be a factor, no question about that.
Well, when he is free of traffic, his lapse times are a little bit quicker than the leader, Robbie Crouch.
So we'll have to keep our eye on Chuck Bound back there in that very, very pretty green and white Pontiac. One of the prettiest cars on the racetrack as we see Robbie Crouch come down the front straightaway, still holding the lead, but Randy Lejoy right on his bumper. And back there in 3rd place, Steve Poland. He hasn't had the lead at all, but he's hung right with the leaders all day long. But the man out front right now is Robbie Crouch. And earlier, Steve had a chance to talk with him.
Where's the ideal place to pass on this racetrack?
Ideal. Well, we haven't got that much experience now, you know. With the 311 car, we're hurting coming out of the corners. We're all set going into the corners and through the middle cars, but coming out of the corner, we're just down on power. These banks are so high that you're actually driving uphill coming out of the corners, getting the straightaway, and our car, our 311, just has a guy coming out of the corner. So what we've got to do is try to get up beside them, going into the corner, and through the coming out, and we'll be all set if we can do that. If we start having a little handling problem going in, we're going to be in trouble.
Well, it sure isn't any problems right now because that small engine car of Robbie Crouch is handling perfectly here on a Monster Mile.
And Brock, he took the lead, passing exactly as that is Claude again in the middle of the racetrack, and coming down on him, hitting the brake, is Hector Leclerc. How on earth did he miss him?
Well, that was a close call for everybody. As Claude Gou heads for the pits, he's going to have a talk with Honest Ed and the boys about the way that thing's handling. Caution is out. We'll be back with more from Dover after this.
Monster Mile. Robbie Crouch, car number 48, leading, but just inches ahead of Randy Lejoy throughout the previous laps. I'm Steve Evans, along with Brock Yates and Ed Bruce down in Talladega. Looks like it's going to be a green one, Brock. It is. We're racing again.
Right you are, Steve, and it's going to be a repeat performance by the two guys, Randy Lejoy and Crouch, who have been banging on each other for a whole bunch of laps, and still back there in 3rd place, old Steve Poland. He's trying, but he just doesn't have quite enough steam to catch up with this man, Robbie Crouch, whose small engine Pontiac is dominating this race at the present time.
But with a big engine is Chuck Bound back to the 6th position. However, getting around the fellow in front of him may not be easy. That is Dick McCabe, car number 0, riding in 5th. McCabe still has a chance this season, Brock, of winning the overall championship.
Well, he's done it once before, a solid driver. He's a businessman from Kennebunkport, Maine, in the fishing business up there. Driver on this circuit, and a fine driver. As you said earlier, I think he ran 2nd here last year. Hasn't quite got it hooked up here at Dover Downs right now. Just seems to be down on power a little bit, but he's going to be a factor in terms of Chuck Bound's future as we go to the leaders, Robbie Crouch in that blue and white number. There's a formation flying around here, Steve, with Randy Lejoy right behind him.
Well, the Robbie and Randy show is certainly giving the fans their money's worth here, along with Chuck Bound back in the pack trying to catch him. It looks to me, Brock, like Randy is getting a little more aggressive here.
We can run right with Robbie, and he's got the larger engine car. With Robbie Crouch just kind of holding that line, he may be holding Randy Lejoy up a little bit. Randy might be able to run quicker, but Robbie's car gets about 20 feet wide going down into those corners, and Randy just can't get by him. And Robbie Crouch's car definitely seems to handle a little bit better in the turns. As we see back, Tom Glazer and Beaver Dragon, Bob Dragon, two brothers for the 7th place spot. Bob and Beaver, two guys that are very well known in the NASCAR North Tour. Beaver running a Buick, Bob Dragon in a Pontiac, and Tom Glazer out front in a Chevrolet. So we got an all GM battle there for 7th place, Steve.
And up front is right behind him. 111-inch engine, the advantages and the disadvantages to that particular engine combination. Well, the fellow that's right on his bumper, Randy Lejoy, he runs the big motor, over 350 cubic inches. Brock Yates had a chance to talk to Randy about his particular engine combination and how he felt it would do here at
Randy, it looks a lot of homers for Dover. Everybody's running real strong, and it looks like the chassis setup curves are really a lot better than they were last year.
Yeah, guys, last year they had a year of education last year, and we really come down here blind last year, so now everybody knows what they're doing, and the cars are really going real quick.
Well, how about the big engines? What do you think about that?
Gear real pretty good, so the small engines ain't as much of a disadvantage as they were last year, but I think the bigger motor's the way to go.
Okay, and a battle shaping up here now for the third spot. Steve Poland, number 34, trying to hold off Hector Leclerc, the Canadian in number 59, but I don't think he's going to be able
to wins on the Nascar North circuit over the years. He's a veteran in this circuit. He's riding in third place. He's out of Burlington, Vermont, and a very popular driver. He's won 9 times over the years in this league, Steve.
Well, if he's going to win 10 times, he better start catching these two guys. Up front, Robbie Crouch right on his bumper is these youngsters. Tags the wall. That is car number 44, Keith Cavanaugh, and what a job Lejoy did. But Brocky indeed hit the wall.
Well, he did a super job missing this young man, Keith Cavanaugh, who got up into turn 1 and got way wide, did himself a spin, and Lejoy up there on the right side of your screen. He tries to squeeze between Cavanaugh and the wall, and it just doesn't work that well. He slides along the wall. Fortunately, didn't hurt the automobile too badly, but now it cautions out. And of course, Randy Lejoy comes into the pits to check the right side of that automobile. Doesn't look Steve.
You don't think that was the goal. He had Crouch right in front of him, possibly blocking the view. These can be blind corners when they're banked this steeply. The caution is out, and back out of the track goes Randy Lejoy. We'll rejoin the action here at Dover right after these words.
Now, right before your ordinary foods into revolutionary tool that cuts and combines food so quickly that you can now make beautiful appetizers in just seconds. Speed Press cuts through an entire sandwich. Each cut makes another appetizer. Get from one sandwich. It's fast and it's fun. Use Speed Press with apples, melons, pears. Build layers of colorful combinations and press delicious squares for ovals. Even make fancy hex shapes. You get 4 Speed Presses in all. Add your own special touch to fruit salads. Add fancy fruits to ice cream and sugar for an exciting change of pace. Cake. Watch the layers fill up the chamber. Press it out and dip into powdered sugar or chocolate. You just made a petit four. Cut meat and vegetables and light batter fry to golden brown. Imagine the fun at your next party serving dishes that will make you the envy of all your friends. In this special offer, you get all 4 Speed Presses, full instructions, and a book with all the secrets of great entertaining. But that's not all. You also get the amazing Chef's Decorator that makes instant water blankets for calorie lunches. The Chef's Decorator is yours just for trying Speed Press. Order now.
Use your Visa or MasterCard. Call 1-800-468-1300. That's 1-800-468.
Mile Speedway in the Nascar North 200 as Randy Lejoy returns to the pit for more work on that race car. Barely.
I'm sure he's looking out the window, the field circling around, putting him further and further behind. His problems here, Brock, could only come under the heading of racing luck, and in this case, bad.
Right, Steve, but the other way, maybe there was a little bit of good luck involved there as well, because had he not had quick reaction times, he'd have nailed one and would have for good. As it
but with a lot of valuable time lost. So as Randy Lejoy goes out to try to find his spot in the field, let's again visit with Ed Bruce down in Talladega.
When I last talked to Andy Albright in Talladega, we were looking at the Bluebird, and now we're looking at a different aspect of speed. Very aptly, it is ugly.
One of the big link monsters was driven by Art Arfon. It's powered by an 1,800 horsepower Allison aircraft engine. It's the first dragster to obtain a speed of 150 miles an hour and a quarter of a mile. It has front wheel pull to give him more traction back in those days for his speed.
Well, it's also differential.
Sure. And also led to the wide slicks that they're using in today's drag races.
All right, now you mentioned the slicks. I noticed one thing about these tires. It looks like somebody's been driving on them with them being out around or out of line. They got tread on half the tire with them.
I think that's tire wear. Probably when it was dragging back in those days, the tracks and the strips wasn't as smooth as